Coming up this week on the Digital Lifestyle Show 775, Jeremy Sinclair, Windows Insider MVP from the US, is joining me tonight. And we've got a whole lot of stuff to talk about. Jeremy's going to talk about how he got into technology, how he got into the Windows Insider program, starting with Windows Mobile, as a lot of us enthusiasts have done, and how he getting into testing Windows on ARM, and he's a real big fan of Windows on ARM. We'll be talking about 20H2 that's just launched today. As I record on Tuesday evening, we'll be talking about the latest dev build that was released from Microsoft last week. We're talking Surface Duo as well, and lots more. So let's get straight to Jeremy. Jeremy Sinclair, welcome to the show.
Hey, how are you doing?
It's really great to get you on the show. We've communicated over various methods for some time now, and we were both on the Windows Insider webcast a couple of weeks ago, which was pretty exciting. But I wanted to get you on the show, talk about your sort of technology that you're using, the MVP, because you're a Windows Insider MVP, new for this year, right? That was your first year.
Yeah, new for this year, January 1st.
Yeah, so I wanted to talk to you about that, but I also wanted to find out a bit more about you, what kind of technology you're into. I wanted to talk about like Surface Duo, which I know you're interested in. ARM on Windows 10, which we know you're a big fan of, so I want to talk about that as well. And there's some news coming out as we record on Tuesday evening. The 20H2 update's out, so we'll touch on that as well, and some other stuff in the news. We got new dev builds last week. So let's start at the beginning though. So you're a new Windows Insider. Well, I say new. We're into the October now, but new for 2020, Windows Insider MVP. Yeah. And so first of all, give me a background on you. So how did you get into technology, and then how did you then get into Windows Insider and the Insider MVP process?
So the story about me and technology goes way back to probably around 4 or 5 years old. My dad, he had this monstrous 486, or maybe it was a 386, one of those. And, I just looked up to him and wanted to basically do the same things he did. So I watched him on the computer. I ended up learning DOS by myself and subsequently crashing his entire machine quite a few times and the troubleshooting process. I mean, like I had a lot of tech influence, basically through my dad. We had this cool thing called CompuKids that was at the college he went to, and it was really a program. This was like back in like 1992, I think. The program was basically for kids to get them involved with technology. We just played on computers and learned a lot of stuff in the computer lab from that college, and it was really cool. It was really cool. I had a lot of fun, and basically eventually through just my typical trial and error and troubleshooting, I just decided to learn everything that I could find. And fast forward to the Windows Insiders program, I owe it all to our fallen friend, the Windows Phone.
Yep. Many of them up on my shelf of doom behind me.
Oh yeah. Basically when they had the dev preview for Windows Phone 8.1, and then as a result of that, they sent out Microsoft sent out the emails saying that they announced the Windows 10 and that they would have those Windows Insider program, and I pretty much hopped on it because I liked that the preview. I love the goodies, that brand new stuff that comes out. I like digging around with it. So that's what really got me into it. Because as you know, the initial previews, they were definitely rough around the edges.
Yeah, they were, and the I think you needed to get. Was it like a Lumia 650 or something to try? I think I ended up getting a 650 just to test Windows 10 Mobile.
Oh yeah, well, and then I think with Windows 10 Mobile also, I had I think I did mine with a 920, and then eventually I had a 1520, which I think out of all my phones, my 1520 was my favorite phone. And that was the
Yeah,
phone that my friends who had iPhones, they, cracked jokes on me saying, "Oh, look at that big gigantic phone. It cannot even fit in your pocket." And then the 5S comes out and nobody bats an eye.
the 1520 was a brilliant phone. I've still got mine in the drawer down there. It doesn't work very well, but yeah, it was a fantastic phone, and it was one of the first phones with a big camera bump, and now camera bumps are everywhere.
Yeah. That's one thing I can really say about that. And I know I typically try not to reminisce on Windows Phone, but the one thing I can say is there's been so much that has been influenced by it, and there's nothing that can be denied. A lot of the newer phones out there, the new styles, the features, that's Windows Phone. Y'all got it from that. I mean, I can see Android and Windows Phone playing off of each other with features, but you know where it came from, because the things we're seeing now we've already seen. It's just a more perfected and modern, form of it.
There's something about the especially I think it was Windows Phone 8.1 and the Windows Phone 10 or Windows 10 mobile. There's about the start menu that still looks good now. I got a 950, and every now and again I power it up, and I still like the way this looks. And I know it's looking dated now, but there's something about it, especially going from just icons on Android on iOS. There was something special about that the way that looked.
Right. Very, very much so.
So that's what got you into testing, or into the Insider program, because you wanted to test Windows 10 mobile.
Yeah, it was that was the catalyst, and then when Windows 10, the OS, got announced, I knew I needed to hop on that.
So were you, or are you already in the tech industry for your sort of day job?
Oh yeah. So for my day job, I am basically an enterprise.NET developer. So I've been to start that story off, I was an intern. I think the end of my second year of being in university, interned at the place where I work now, basically a systems engineer. So I have that under my belt also. So I started off building servers, automating a lot of stuff. I learned PowerShell first because of that job. So like my background is kind of all over the place. And so like eventually, I think in 2010, that's when I transitioned over to being in our web development team.
Yeah, so you're using the sort of the .NET Microsoft technologies.
Oh yeah.
That's funny. A lot of people that we talk to on the show, your co-host Gary, he's not on the show at the moment, but he's a developer, and I started with my MSDN, my MCSD with with doing Visual Interdev and Visuals.
That's a name I haven't heard in a while.
Yeah, and many of us on the show, and Richard as well, we all came from that dev. I think that's where the sort of enthusiasm for Windows 10 comes in, because especially if you're a dev, you can do things, you can tinker with things, and you can set those up in your home, and that's where it brings that technology into your home as well. Gary and I started with Windows Media Center, and that was because we could tinker around, program it, and that really, Windows Media Center is what a lot of Windows Phone comes from. Windows Media Center, that sort of UI experience. So, yeah, it's funny that a lot of people we talk to on this show, the day jobs are around developing sort of with Microsoft technologies, but that sort of transitions and carries over to your hobby. So you got into doing with the Windows Insider program onto PCs. Then I guess that was the next thing.
Oh yeah, and really, that goes back to my interaction with Windows as a whole growing up. So the first version of Windows I used was 3.1, and even then I went from Windows to DOS DOS back and forth. And I think it was maybe Windows 98 SE was probably when I started sticking into Windows and not saying I don't like this anymore and going back to DOS. But I think I had just the graphics cards. So back in those days, late 90s, early 2000s, you had I had the ATI cards and the NVIDIA cards.
Yeah.
One of the
cards.
Notorious for blue screens. So just troubleshooting that. So that's what kind of started all of that off. Just the troubleshooting of why am I getting this blue screen? Why is Internet Explorer 3.1 destroying my auto exec and config sys files every single time I install it? Like things like that. Like I'm used to either breaking things or things breaking around me. So all of that knowledge and experience just carries out, up to Windows 10 for me.
Yeah, that's a good way of getting started. Yeah, we've all played autoexec.bat, getting Doom to work and all that kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
You learn a lot about network config files when you've got a need to do it. And I think, being able to tinker like that is great. My son's just getting into IT, and I tell him the same thing. He's building his own game PC. Just tinker, break Windows, we'll rebuild it. Doesn't worry, don't worry. We can. That's how you learn. And I think that's perhaps the harder thing with modern devices is it's actually quite hard to be able to tinker around with them like you used to be able to do. It was probably easier with 486 and Pentiums and autoexec.bats.
Oh yeah, that I agree with that. So much has changed. Used to just have the BIOS boot, and now you got UEFI, and that's a whole new level.
So I guess, did you mess with that IRQs on Sound Blaster cards and all that kind of thing?
Yeah, the trial just to get my games working properly. And I think out of everything, the one thing I could never consistently get working was MIDI. So most of the time, maybe have a 10% success rate with the MIDI driver working, and so most of my the music would just be either choppy or just wouldn't work at all. But everything's a learning experience, and as much as a lot of that stuff frustrates me, it's that frustration that drives me to find the answer to that problem.
Yeah, and I think that's what that's how you learn things. It's you can teach yourself online courses or your attend courses, but actually breaking stuff, fixing stuff, figuring out stuff, that's really how you learn a lot. So I guess those skills are now what is useful for when you're being a Windows insider and doing Windows 10 testing.
Oh yeah. Definitely. And that's why I like this program so much, is they're giving us a chance to preview these bits and test it out, because I know as a developer and dealing with a lot of people, testers, there's only so much that you can account for and that you can test, or you or 10, 20 other people can test based on your habits. You can think of the test suites, but they all conform to some certain configuration. When it comes to having so many different devices in different configurations, that's a whole new ball game. And that's why this program is really awesome to be in, because we have that ability to contribute to at least finding the fixes, or even saying, hey, there's this big bug that may or not be like a stoppage, and we can give them that feedback. Say they can ship it off to the applicable teams, and we've just made Windows a little bit better.
Yeah. Now, when you're doing your Windows testing, how do you go about testing on devices? Because, do you use it on your main device? Do you have a secondary device? What do you find the best way for you is?
Well, I'm one of those people who they put the disclaimer up for to not use on your main devices. So I have my Surface Pro X. I have my work laptop and a VM running in Parallels. Well, actually, I actually have another laptop that used to be my development laptop, but now just kind of sits as my VPN gateway. But I have dev channel on all of them. And the reason for that is there's been numerous times where I have the same update process, but then there's one or two things that blow up or just don't happen on a machine, and then the other three work.
Yeah.
So I use that as baselines. So I'm like, okay, this is blown up over here. Let's compare what's different, what's erroring. Oh, this works over here. Okay, I can look in the registry, see what's going on, which files, what's doing what, and what's the difference between these devices that's causing this unexpected reaction. So I use that to. It's not even really on, it's consciously me doing it. It's just I like new things. I know it's going to break. It's better for me to deal with it head on when it happens, rather than just ignore it or say, oh, this is someone else's problem.
So what do you find then? Your strategy sort of for testing builds out is do you have some systems in place to sort of recover things, or are you just prepared to rebuild if you have to, or if something goes terminally wrong?
Oh, if I have to rebuild, that's when I know it's a huge problem. But I think for the most part, I'm fine with rebuilding, because at some point I'm usually doing something that I shouldn't do with the machine, and then I accidentally wipe out my user profile, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I don't care. But really, if there's something that is ruining the my experience with it, it's like completely ruining it, I will troubleshoot any way I can and find some sort of workaround. Or what has always worked, I think at least 5 different times, even between me and seeing troubleshooting my coworkers' computers. If it doesn't work the first time, usually an in-place update, in-place upgrade of that same build on that machine will fix it all.
That's a really good tip, actually, because I've done that a couple of times myself. So just explain what you mean by that. So you're just reinstalling Windows over Windows.
Yeah. So you pretty much, if you have the the ISO for that build, you run it in Windows and click run the setup, just do an upgrade. So the upgrade, it still runs through that whole migration process, and you can still choose to keep your all your files and apps. But what it does, it pretty much remigrates all of the files, all of the configuration. Because usually 9 times out of 10, if something doesn't work right the first time, like a common one is if firewall blocking things and group policy blowing up. I had a horrible case of troubleshooting one of my teammates' computers, and it was a nightmare. And I'm just like, you know what? Let's just do an in-place upgrade. As soon as we did that, everything was completely fine. And it feels like it's magic, really.
But I guess that's a bit like using the reset option, isn't it, in settings, where you can do like a reset, because it's kind of refreshing the install, but it doesn't wipe it out the same.
Right. It doesn't actually wipe your settings. It just goes through the entire upgrade process like again. And so if there was something that happened to be weird during that migration, it's going to run through all of that again. And it's almost like, just a second pass around, just restarting that process.
Yeah, that's a good tip. That I guess you're finding like me now that probably the last couple of years, even especially the last year, these builds have been they're not a huge amount of changes, so they've been pretty stable, and I'm finding they just kind of just go through apart from the odd one you have an issue with.
Mm-hmm. And usually, my issues are I like to run my ARM64 machine, which they're doing a lot of work in there, so I expect things to blow up when I have my Surface Pro on the dev channel. And honestly, that's even for some of the other builds. I know there have been issues, but it's really awesome to know that the team is actually taking everything into consideration. They're listening, and all the feedback that they take in and use to help solve the issues. That feels like so rewarding.
Now, we wanted to talk to you about because you're really enthusiasm of Windows 10 and ARM. So you're using a Windows using Surface Pro X. So what is it? What is this with Windows 10 ARM and you then?
Well, so I initially was introduced to Windows 10 and ARM because of Build 2018, which I think actually that was my first build conference. I happened to win the Asus NovaGo from there during a raffle. And as soon as I started playing with it, I just fell in love with it because I didn't know what to expect. So I see, I think of Windows 10 on ARM. I think of like a Windows 8 RT, which I'm like, okay, I have some good, bad experiences with that. I think of, okay, this is the same architecture that the Windows Phone ran on, sort of, but ARM, instead of ARM 32, it's ARM 64. I'm like, okay, let's see how this experience. The experience was just, this is Windows, and that's what kind of got me. I was like, this is Windows, and the battery life was just phenomenal. And really, once the Pro X came out, I knew I had to hop on that because that was my big wish. So I see all these other companies, these OEMs making Windows 10 on ARM devices. Where's Microsoft? Where's your device? And that's what they gave us, the Pro X. So I knew there's been a few years for the R&D factor to being considered with all the OS updates, getting everything, a lot of the bugs figured out. So I knew it was the right time for me to make that jump. But I also knew that that I could at least run x86 apps if there weren't ARM equivalent.
So what is it particularly then to ARM that you're interested in? Is it the battery life? Is it because it's a new sort of concept?
It's really just these devices. They're doing all this work, and they're fanless. Like you get more efficiency out of them, and just to see, like, even in the Linux world, a lot of the big servers, they're running things in the cloud using ARM64. So when I look at it from that standpoint, and even circling back to seeing all the stuff you can do with a Raspberry Pi, like, you can do all of that in these tiny chips, and you're putting that in a device that I can run as like a tablet / laptop sort of deal, like I'm all for that, because then I know that there's promise for that. I've run apps on my Pro X that to me have felt like they've ran faster than they do on my laptops that have Intel like Core i7 processors in them. It's just that that mystery around it, and is testing it to see, hey, this can do this I can work with this, and I'm getting at least still well over 12, 13, 14 hours of battery life just using this compact device, carrying it around like it's nothing.
Yeah, because Microsoft's journey with ARM has been interesting. I think I saw CES 2009, I guess it might have been, when they showed off, I think it was 2009, when they showed off a command prompt on an ARM device for the very first time, and that was as far as it got. And then we had the Windows RT, and I've got the Surface over there with Surface RT, which worked great for me, but not for a lot of people because of all the compatibility issues. But for me, I always loved the device. But when they launched the Pro X, I was really super impressed with the device. I love the idea, like you, of a device that's got long battery life. But I often wondered about Microsoft's commitment to Windows on ARM. For example, Teams wasn't available as a native application. Do you think Microsoft have committed now to ARM, because we're seeing a second gen device or a revision of the Pro X with the SG2? We're seeing Teams, and we've got the ARM 64 emulation. So do you think Microsoft are committed to it now?
Oh yeah, I know that there's even a time where I was thinking like, okay, there's yet another app out here, and there's x86, x64, but no ARM 64. And honestly, I think there was a lot of people really, addressing that fear. It's like, hey, what is this? And I think it's on the people, playing with these devices, giving it more, positive shout outs to even convince the developers on, some of the Microsoft teams that, hey, we need to develop for this. One of the first things I did when I got my first ARM64 Windows device was play with the .NET Core, because they had been testing a .NET Core. It was like .NET Core 2.1 for WSL, and seeing how nice that ran compared to the x86 emulation. I'm like, okay, now we're on to something here. Because for me, the .NET team, they've been really crushing it when it comes to the ARM64 support. That's kind of been one of the things that have really just reiterated that they're taking time to put in this effort, because it's honestly not a super easy, actually it's not easy at all for really porting over to ARM64, because the individual SoCs, the system on chips, depending on the manufacturer, they have their own spec, and even for the different OSs, there's a way, different way you have to deal with assembly. But just seeing just all of this effort being placed in, and even voices from within Microsoft just saying, hey, we want to see this, work. That's what I think's really driving. And even if I want to step back to Build 2019, I was a dev MC there, and I get to have a talk with some of the people from the Windows on ARM team, and they really wanted everyone to use the device. And I'm just, okay, cool. They're not just, hey, here's this device, blah 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 does this. They were like, hey, we got all this cool stuff coming. We just talking about all the work they put into it, and I've seen the benefit of it.
Yeah, it does feel like there's a bit more momentum about it now in the last few months.
Yeah. Well, and I can tell you why.
So yeah, why is that?
Is because, and for me personally, I think it's because Apple decided to step into the arena and do something with their new Macs. I think because as we've seen, this architecture, it runs on your phone. You can use your phone throughout the entire day, stick it in your pocket, do whatever, run all these different apps, and it's going to last the bulk of the day. You're seeing that efficiency. And why not utilize it for more applications? I know that just seeing the Visual Studio Code run on my Pro X natively ARM64. I use that so much throughout the day, and I don't bat an eye at the performance because it's working. And I see, like, once more people take advantage of it and take that step to say, hey, we're going to do something with this. More developers develop with it, develop for it, because just about every tool out there has the capability to compile into the format that works for ARM64 for this version of Linux, this version of Windows 10. We got. Well, I think that when it comes to like the Project Reunion and all the other stuff, there's still a story for completing the ARM64 support, but it's pretty much all there. I can create a UWP app and run it right on my Pro X.
Yeah,
I love it. There's so much promise to it, and this is one of those things that I think personally there might even be a little bit of, all right, we saw what Windows Phone could do. Maybe this could be a second chance for them to kind of pick up, continue forward with some of the efforts that they learned from implementing on the Windows Mobile OS. We're seeing all of that on the Windows on ARM. Maybe this was the necessary thing to move forward and bring more optimization to their own apps. That's how I see it, at least. Just that little bit, like, okay, I could see this as a part 2 to that story.
Yeah, so you think that sort of Apple's because Apple are pushing forward with that platform, that Microsoft are now saying, well, we've been doing this for a while, we really need to get going with this, and that's given them sort of new emphasis on the project. That's
at least from what I'd like to think. I mean, I know that I know that they've been doing a lot of work just on that side of things for a while. And there's probably been a few roadblocks, but then that's when I circle back to saying this is where the Windows Insiders step in. This is why we exist, to put in that work, help out, because we can't assume that because so and so employee works at Microsoft they automatically get this device. That's not the case. There's still some people who might not even find it worth developing for, but it's going to take that more of a positive perception to have them think, okay, maybe I'm going to take a chance on this.
So you find then, so with the Pro X as it is now, you finding then that the applications that you need are running okay? Even I guess some of them are using Intel emulation. What's the performance like on those applications?
Well, honestly, I mean, for the x86 emulated applications, a lot of it there's stuff that it depends. There's a lot of applications Microsoft applications like let's say OneDrive for instance, they're utilizing this kind of hybrid binary called I'll just do the letters CHPE, that basically has x86 and ARM64 implementations. So it's kind of like a, hey, we're going to present this as an x86, but on the underlying parts, it's running this ARM64 code. It's going to run, point at this, this version of it that's going to be running native. And that's how a lot of the things have been working. This is how they've been getting around a lot of these issues. But I think, but I say for Teams, for instance, before it was fully ARM64, they had some of the same things happening, but it wasn't kind of deeply integrated. And I think seeing like the native versions of heavy things like heavy Chromium based things like Electron, seeing like they feel so fantastic when Edge Chromium was native ARM64, light years. But I think that still depends on like the type of application. What is it doing? If it's like super intensive and you're going and it's going to be translating a lot of instructions, I think that's where that bottleneck is. But you can get away with just about anything, at least.
Yeah. So you find it, so it's not really restrictive, it's just the performance on some of the emulated stuff. So the more native stuff that comes, the better the device gets.
Oh yeah. And that's why I've been kind of like itching to see more native applications, because once that performance, like once it's native, that performance is skyrocketing. And heck, at WSL2, the stuff you can do with that's what really like blew my mind. If I can, repackage a kernel, a Linux kernel, right on my Pro X with WSL2, and it's floating through that. That's enough to convince me. It's I can do all of this. Once we get more native stuff on Windows, supporting these, supporting ARM64, I think it's going to be a great catalyst.
Now, Microsoft said coming November, I think they said, wasn't it, that there's 64-bit Intel 64-bit emulation for ARM64. Is that right?
Yep, we're going to get that x64 emulation, and I'm actually kind of excited about it.
So what will that bring?
Well, for me, I see that as an intermediate stopgap to the native ARM64. Because if you think about it, there's a lot of things that developers have just completely gone away from throwing x86 versions of it. And there's a lot of things that, because of the way that x86 translation works, like how the environment looks on your computer, it will just assume that you're running, this CPU, and then you get that version of it. I think of Visual Studio, where just the binary itself, like the main binary is x86. There's a lot of these other processes that may be x86 also, but then you got some that are just x64. You get to that part, it blows up. So I see, I even see, even for compilation purposes, if there is a x64 version of some compiler, you can cross compile to ARM64 directly from that device if there hasn't been anything set up to offer that native support. I probably wouldn't ask anyone to try running full-on Photoshop on this, because I'd I doubt it's not going to give you the performance you're going to look for, but I think it's going to be decent enough.
So it means that any 64-bit application should run on it, even if it's not natively compiled for ARM.
Right. That's the idea. And I think whenever we get to that the build from last week, can touch a little more on that.
Oh yeah, go on then. Tell us about that. So last week we got build 20236.
Yep. So the fun things about that build is we started to see the bits of the x64 versions of the applications coming through.
Right.
For instance, the thing I noticed immediately was the .NET framework. So there's actual, .NET framework runtime 64-bit files right on these devices now. And I knew, I say, hey, it's coming November. I'm like, okay, they're not lying then, because if we're starting seeing those bits and pieces come in, I think that this is going to be really interesting. Mainly just to see how it will work in the end.
Yeah.
Because,
so that, go ahead.
So I was saying, I only have like a tiny bit of inkling from just what I'm seeing, how it's going to work, but I want to see how this all fits in, because I'm really anxious to see the performance of these applications.
And Windows Insiders are going to get to see that first, then, aren't they? If you've got your Pro X on the dev channel.
Oh, you know it. Every device I'm running dev channel.
Well, that's what, and I think that combined with the SG2 version, I know it's not a massive update, but it still shows that Microsoft are committed to that 64-bit, sort of the ARM devices and the Surface Pro X. Well, I love the form factor of the Pro X. I've got an old Pro 4 and the Surface laptop, but that Pro X has got that curved design, and it really does appeal to me. So I think I'm really glad that they're continuing with that design.
Yeah, and I really like that signature keyboard too with the pen. I mean, if I want to be frank with you, we're doing this podcast from my Pro X.
and looking really good as well. Now, a couple of things I wanted to talk to you as well. Actually, as we record tonight, 20H2 is out.
Oh yeah.
So if so you won't be getting that because you're on the dev channel, but to anybody on either on release preview or beta, which would have had it for a while, but yeah. So what do you think of 20H2? It's a minor update, but looks quite nice.
Yeah, I mean, you're starting to see a lot of the I guess improvements around. I actually want to call out Edge on this one. You're going to see that the Alt tab between the different tabs in Edge, and a lot more of the management related things with what is it, WDAG, Windows Defender Application Guard. There's some enhancements with that. I think this is going to be a really good release for everyone.
Yeah, I even like the visual changes, like the notifications and the start menu tiles. I think that it's a minor change, but actually to a user, it's a big change, because there's a lot of stuff changing under the hood and the user doesn't see that. But to the start menu, it's there in your face, and I think it looks nice, and it makes it look slightly more modern.
Yeah, and it's really getting closer. I see it as they're getting the goodies that we had few months back.
Yeah.
So, and I think it was actually really cool to see a lot of the stuff that they backported, the things that were in the dev channel that they were like, you know what, we're gonna backport this. So yeah, you're seeing that newness at kind of like the same time as we're seeing it on the dev channel. I like that they're doing bits and pieces of that. Yeah, there's always room for improvement. And I think if the feature or the fix happens in this branch over here, and it's big enough to fix down here, or the feature's cool enough to implement down on the retail branches, go for it.
And I suppose the other thing is it's only a fairly small update. So from like I mentioned on the Insider podcast, from my day job kind of side, those minor changes are quite nice to roll out, because you've got all the under the hood big changes were done in May, and now we just got some lighter changes. So it's not something that needs a huge amount of testing.
Yeah.
Now, and another thing I wanted to ask you, I know you're a fan of, is you mentioned Windows Mobile at the beginning, but things have kind of come around because your background in enjoyed another Microsoft mobile device.
Oh yeah, my precious Duo. Yeah.
Tell us about that.
So this one, I liked it. Well, actually, I wanted to get it because the Android phone I was using at the time, it was just falling apart. But I've been wanting to play with that dual screen experience for a while, since they announced the Neo and Duo. And at first I was a little upset that it wasn't going to be, the Surface phone as it was originally conceived. But I feel like the Android OS on the device was the right decision, because honestly, migrating from my previous Android phone to this one was nothing. It took maybe 10 minutes for me to restore it back up and connect to Your phone. I was up and running, and I was up and playing with multiple apps on 2 displays. Like, I thought that was actually really cool. I didn't know I would ever have a need for it until I started actually using it.
So you got yours quite early, I think more or less on launch, didn't you? You picked up yours. I was following your tweets with envy.
Well, I think FedEx was like a day late or so, because I was supposed to get it. Like the notifications were like, okay, oh, you're supposed to get it this day, and then it's like, update, you're not getting it till the day after it launches. I'm like, I ordered it or pre-ordered this, but I have to wait until the day after. But I was patient, so.
So how you found the device? You've had it for a few weeks now. How are you getting on with it?
I will say I like it. There were some initial things I knew were going to be buggy, like some of like the display rotation, some of the apps just failing to snap properly, etc. But I knew that those were software related fixes, and they released an update, and that resolved a lot of the issues. I mean, I think you and I both are in the launcher beta, and just the improvements around that are really nice. Like, I think it's really cool to see at least how the dual screen optimized applications look on it when you're in the full screen, and then the different type of modes, and even for the ones that aren't really optimized, it's like they still look good. So it's something different that has, I'd say, like a decent amount of promise to it. I'm curious to just looking at the other devices, the Samsung devices, and Lenovo, I think, came out with a foldable device also. So I think this is going to be an interesting device form factor.
Yeah, it is definitely. I mean, I hadn't had a huge amount of time with the Samsung ones. I did play with some time with the Fold actually over the weekend, and that just feels like it's folding to make it smaller in your pocket. So it's a big phone, and then you fold it away and put it in your pocket. Whereas I think with the Duo, it's different, isn't it? It's a dual screen device, and I kind of the only way I can equate it to is if you're a laptop user and you use a laptop and a second monitor, which most people do when they're at a desk, going back to a single laptop is quite restrictive, a single screen, and that's what it feels like with this. You need the two screens, and when you go back to one, but it's not a big screen; it's two screens, and that, having that, I think is what's really good with it. I really like that. So it's not just splitting for it's not just a big screen,
right?
It's the two screens, and I think that makes a big difference.
Well, and I know a lot of people, they've talked about the fact that there's, that hinge, and they can't watch a YouTube video in full screen, but they need to realize, like, when the device was first announced, they gave the target demographic for the device. It's not for that, I want this cool phone here, I'm going to use this and do everything on it. It's like, it's not for that. It's for productivity. It's for those who want to do two things at once. I do conference calls with teams, and do your to-do list and planner. It's more of like a, I want to say, enterprise sort of feel to it. It's not meant for that common use. I mean, you can, but you're not going to get ultra premium features. You're not going to get like a 90 megapixel camera and all of that with it. It's powerful enough. I'll give it that. And it works. It does everything I need. But it's like I don't need the ultimate features that you're seeing on these gaming phones and the Samsung devices. Like, they have their place, definitely, and I know the bulk of the consumers are going to go for that. But stepping back, the Duo isn't for those super high performance specs.
Yeah, I mean, I was just looking at something the other day, and I had two separate Edge windows up side by side, and it's great for doing stuff like that. And just little things like I've got a Samsung smartwatch, and so you've got the Samsung wearables app and you've got the Samsung health app, and they go great together side by side. So there's just loads of little things like that. And of course, one I found the other day, which was a ZX Spectrum Emulator. So you had the Spectrum keyboard on the lower half and the Spectrum screen on the top. Which what more can you want to use your super expensive device for?
What I think would be cool is if the xCloud app, instead of having to connect to the Xbox controller, which no, I'm stepping out of what I just said a few minutes ago about it not being for that type of things, but this is different. It's streaming stuff to it. It'd be cool to have like use the different screen as the controller.
Yeah.
But what I really do like though is seeing the fact that the Swift key uses that second screen as a keyboard when you're in that mode. That's actually really useful.
Yeah, actually, that's what I was saying to Richard last week on the show. I use that quite a bit in that composer mode, especially for tweets and text and things. It's a big keyboard, but it works really well.
Yeah, there's a few enhancements I'd like to see them do, like having the keyboard just span across both of the screens when you're holding it like a book, because I can see this having that split keyboard, the split keys. I'd actually be able to type a lot faster with it. But I think overall, my experience has been great. I pretty much just charge it maybe once a day and a half, and then that's it. Because for this one, I don't want to charge it on my next to my little table next to bed, just in case I accidentally knock it off by tripping over one of the cords like I typically do. But I really see, like, I don't have a reason to charge it every 2 hours or so. It works for me. I mean, battery life's great on it. Performance is great. This
Yeah,
is cool.
that's my experience. Yeah, I mean, I miss the NFC a bit, but
Mhm.
I have got the a wearable that's got NFC, so it's not too bad. And I think the wireless charging, I only missed that because of the sort of reports of fragility of the port, and I'm a bit really careful when I put it in. But that would get away with that. But it's one of those things.
Yeah, and I think it's I mean, this is a Gen 1 device, and I think with a lot of the feedback all of us users give, sure, Gen 2 is going to be even better. But I mean, for the device as it is, I like it.
How have you found the fact in single screen mode? I actually found that the width of the screen, that layout of the screen is better than the tall kind of screen that you would get on something like a Galaxy. You've got that really tall thin screen. I prefer, even in single screen mode, that layout. That I think it's 4:3 more or less, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I just like how it's a nice like form factor, like that screen size, because I look at it compared to my other phones, which are just bigger and skinnier. It feels like, okay, this is actually just kind of like a right size. It's just has more width to it, which I like.
That's it. Yeah, I think that's the key, is the width of it that really makes a difference.
It is really interesting though. This switching back and forth between dual pane and single pane mode, and taking pictures that way. I like how you can flip the screen and it kind of catches that context, and then it's like, oh, we're gonna look over here. We're like the double tap to switch the window. It's those little things I find really cool, and I'm starting to get really used to when using this phone. But it's been pretty nice for me. I haven't had anything completely freeze to where I needed to reboot it.
I found it's a very tactile device, and it's one of those devices you want to pick up and play. I find it's on my desk, and I just pick it up and open it up, and then close it up again. It really does feel it's one of those devices you want to play with.
Oh yeah, I'm always just opening it and just hearing that little that little clap when you close it. It's like, I don't know what it is about it, but I even like these little rubber bumper things, because I have accidentally on carpet dropped the phone, and just knowing that, okay, this little bumper guard's not making the thing crack into pieces. Yeah, it's pretty durable.
Yeah, it's nice. I just like having it. I think having something different form factor rather than a straight rectangle. I like small tablets, and I've stopped using those now. And this is the device that I use on the sofa now. And you can even do you can do some writing with it if you want. OneNote's on there and everything else, Word. So yeah, it's become sort of my go-to device for almost everything now. It's a very fun device to play around with, and it does makes you hopefully that we'll see new devices coming in the future that are going to build on the success and add the missing things that we talked about: wireless charge, NFC, and improved camera. That's probably about it really that I would improve on. But for a first gen device, it's really interesting. It's not, like you said, it's not for everybody. But it is a nice device to play around with.
Oh yeah, and I think a lot of people they really it's the price that really gets them, because this is quite an expensive device. I actually paid more for it than I did my Pro X, but I feel like, okay, I knew I was going to get this device, so it was we're gonna pay for it anyways. We know it's a first gen. I know that there's going to be a better device, but I felt like it was really something that I wanted to see, based on even playing with the Duo emulator, and just seeing all the presentations and examples around this dual screen Android experience. I think there's a lot of great stuff we're going to see in the future with this.
Yeah, there's more to come. And hopefully Android 11 should bring us some new stuff as well when it comes out for the device.
Yeah, I'm really very curious about when that's going to happen. I mean, but I can say I'm impressed with the updates. The fact that we actually got an update shortly after the month started, because that was one of the things I was a little worried about, because I know how a lot of the Android device makers do with their updates. But they've shown that they're going to support it for, I think they said 3 years they're gonna do updates, I think, which is nice, because most people rarely keep a phone for that long.
Yeah, it's a really interesting device, and I think dual screens are definitely a very fascinating area. I just hopefully we can be talking maybe next year we can be talking Surface Neo, because that's something that is interesting as well, and I know you're keen on that as well.
Yeah, I hope Neo comes at some point. I knew it got delayed, because the unfortunate events of this year that have ruined my first in-person MVP summit, etc., etc. But I think there's going to be a lot of adjustment, as you said. Like this is a cool device. There's going to be a lot of cool stuff coming within the next few years. So only time will tell.
Yeah, and hopefully, like maybe next time when we talk about 10x. We haven't really got time to talk about that too much, but hopefully that's something that we'll get as insiders get our hands on at some point in the future, and we can start talking about that.
Oh yeah.
I think you need a device for that then.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna need a device. So I use so many throughout the day. It's just I might as well just have them surrounding me 24/7. I'm cool with that. I am very
absolutely. Cool. Yeah, I'm rocking the Surface headphones as well.
Oh yeah, it's amazing. This Pro X, just buying that started like a chain reaction. So I have 3 Surface devices now.
Yeah, well, I guess that's what I'm looking at here now. 3 in front of me as well. So so I know where you're coming from. Well, Jeremy, it's been absolutely brilliant to get you on the show. I would definitely have to get you back on again, because I really enjoyed talking to you. And when we get some more ARM stuff, I want to come straight back to you, because I know you're our guy now for Windows on ARM.
Yeah, thank you. Like I really appreciated you reaching out to me and me being on here, and I will definitely return, because this has been really cool.
Excellent. So where can people go to find out more about what you're doing and your stuff and your ARM news?
Most of the stuff I do is on my Twitter account. It's Sinclairinator, with Sinclair SINCLAIRINAT0R. Most of the time you can see me just yelling about more ARM stuff, me being excited about random development, me doing random development and breaking things. But overall, I mean, that's the quickest place you can find me.
Yeah, and that's where I checked, making sure that you've not got a better version than me of the launcher. I want to have the same one. I don't want to have a worse one.
Yeah.
Well, I really do appreciate you taking time, your afternoon, evening, I guess it is, for you. We'll definitely get you back on the show in the future. So for now, thanks very much, Jeremy, and we'll see you on the future show.
Yeah, thank you, and see you.
Thanks to Jeremy. We'll be back same time, same place next week. You can email me in at digitallifestyle.com. I'm at ISDP on Twitter. Thanks very much for Jeremy for joining us. Really enjoyed that chat. We're back with our usual show next week, so see you next week.